I apologize for the inconvenience or confusion. I had a little bit of trouble getting this meeting started on my laptop at home. As you may have heard by now, we had another bomb threat, which means that we did not have class in person today. We are instead going to have virtual class, and you're welcome to join in if you want to and watch. Why am I saying this? You either know about it or you don't. You know, you're not going to hear this until you start watching the video. So, and by that time, it'll be too late to join the live. Anyhow, see, they took me out of my flow. I'm all confused now. At any rate, what I'm going to do is, as we talked about last time, I'm going to go over the other way to do queries in LINQ. We looked over last time using lambda expressions, and lambda expressions are things that look like this, just to review. They look like this. And we had two in this case, one for the course, the department, the instructor, and the office assignment, and another to pull the list of enrollments. Again, there's a lot of ways that you could do this. The way I chose to do it was to pull all the things where there are all the things in the header information, and then the list of students separately. So in your case, when you do your assignment for category showing all the meals, I would show for a given category, I would retrieve the category and I would include the meals so that, and use those navigation properties to create a link between those two. So you don't necessarily need two queries. I'm not even sure I needed two queries in this case, but that's how I wrote it. All right, let's look at the second example. And to refresh your memory, this example is the same thing as the first, except it uses the other syntax, that is the query syntax instead of the method syntax. I think I misspoke before. I think I said that was an example of the query syntax. That was an example of the method syntax. What we're going to show you now is an example of the query syntax. So just to make sure you understand this, how this works is like this. It does its thing. We pick a course. We can pick a query to show the roster. And it shows the name of the course, the department, the instructor, and the office if there was any, and the student if there was any. Let's pick another one of these. English. All right, this shows that composition is the course, the department is English, the instructor is Kim Abercrombie. Not sure why we have instructor twice. Well, I know why we have instructor twice. I coded it that way, but that was done accidentally. We'll take care of that at some point. All right. This is the same. This is the same results as we had with the other query. All right. Same results as we had with the other query. So the results are the same, and you can do any query any number of different ways. But it's up to you which one you like better and which one you are more comfortable with. So let's look at the code for this one. Just as a reminder, I promise we will get to the code in this one. Just a reminder, this working the way that it does is predicated on you having the model defined correctly. What that means is the use of these navigation properties. So for example, a course links to multiple course assignments. So the course has attached with it a collection of course assignments, has a collection of enrollments, and it has a single department associated with it. And we can follow those navigation properties through. The course assignment relates to having one instructor and one course associated with it. And the instructor has a list of course assignments with them. The more, the better that you define these in the correct, if you define these in a correct way like this will enable you to do the kind of coding that you want to do and do your queries very easily for you. All right. So let's start by looking at the query in the model. I've defined 3 arrays or 3 lists and 2 strings, a string for the course name, a string for the department name. Why are they strings? Because I only have one. A course only has one name. A course by definition only has one department associated with it. Therefore, only one department name. The instructor name and office, however, there can be multiple instructors on a course. And there, of course, can be multiple students associated with the course. So I broke this down actually and did a bunch of queries. First of all, what this is doing on get is it is taking as an argument an ID. Where does it get the ID from? It gets the ID from the course index. Because if you notice where it makes that link to the roster page, it puts the ID as part of the page that we're going to. What this does is this adds the course ID to the URL that we are calling. And so the first thing we do is we make sure that that gets set correctly. In other words, if someone just happens to type in that URL, we get this message saying it's an invalid course. Okay. So we make sure, we look to see if the ID is null. If it's null, we simply return. All right, we don't continue and do this other stuff. I have actually in here 3 queries. One relates to pulling up the course stuff, one relates to pulling up the instructor stuff, and one relates to pulling up the student stuff. Could you write this in all in one query? Yeah, maybe, but in this case, I would rather write a couple of simple queries than one long, gigantic, confusing query. So I create a variable of course stuff. All right. From C in context courses. What does that mean? That means that we are going to pull all the courses from this context, the context that this page gets passed in originally. In other words, the database that we're using, the school context. We're going to start by pulling information from that table. Are we interested in everything? No. We are interested in only 2 things. We're interested in the title, and we're interested in the department name. Now, we have a where clause here because we don't want all the courses. We only want the courses where the course ID equals the ID that gets passed in here. In other words, the ID from the query string. So we're pulling from the list of courses where the course ID matches the course ID on the query string. What are we pulling? We're pulling the C title, so that is the course title, and the C department name, or C department name. And we're putting that in a variable called department. That is these string variables we made up here. No, actually it isn't. We'll get to that in a second. So this query, the result of this query is going to be a list of things that have a title and a department associated with them. We got the department from C title, C department title. Notice nowhere in here am I saying that it links to the department table. If we followed the rules for creating the navigation properties correctly, that happens automatically. All right. So there's no need to worry about that. Just define the model correctly. Defining the model correctly is so critical for you being able to do these queries correctly. So we now have maybe a list of things. We know there's only going to be one, all right, but this is going to return actually a list of stuff called course stuff. Actually, it's returning a iQueryable. All right. We do a similar thing for instructor stuff. We want to pull everything from the course assignments where the course in the course assignments equals the ID that gets passed in. And what are we going to select for that? We're going to select the instructor, the INS, which is the course assignments, instructor, and the instructor's full name. So we're forming a chain here. INS are the things in the course assignments table. We're filtering out and getting only the ones that match the ID of the course. We're pulling from that the instructor related to the course assignments, and about that instructor, we're pulling the full name. Here we have one more step down the line. The instructor, the course assignments element has an instructor associated with it. That instructor has an office assignment, and then we're pulling that location, the office location for that instructor. So we're actually pulling things from 3 entities in this case. We're getting a list of course assignments, but from that course assignment, we're pulling the instructor and then the office relating to that instructor. Now, in this case, we might get a list of things. That iQueryable might be a list of things because there can be multiple instructors on a course. In the first query's case, we know there's only one. All right, so we don't have to worry about there being more. Finally, we pull the student stuff. Excuse me. And we get a list in the context enrollments where e.course ID equals the ID. So we're pulling all the things from the enrollment entity, that is the enrollment table. And what are we pulling from it? We are pulling the student related to that enrollment entity, because they have one student related to that enrollment entity. And what are we pulling for that student? We're pulling, I think, the last name and first name, or maybe the full name. Yeah, the full name. So now we have these 3 results. And according to this, it's an iQueryable of type A being an anonymous type. All right, it's an anonymous type because there's no name given to the type. We just know that it has an instructor and an office in this case. It has a title and a department in this case. And it has a student full name in this case. So I want to take from those query results and fill in these things that are part of the model, which I'm going to pass to the Razor page, the CSS_HTML page. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I pull for every item in course stuff, I pull the title and the department. How do I know it is title, and department, because that's what we set here in the first query. We said title in this anonymous class. We're creating a new member of an anonymous class, and we're defining that it has a title attribute, and we're saying that equal to the title from the course. We're saying it has a department attribute, and we're setting that to the department name associated with that course. So as we loop through every element in this, every item in this, we pull out the title and the department and put that in the course name and department name. So now the course name and the department name, these variables associated with this model get filled in so that the course name and department name are the correct course name and department name. The other ones are a little more involved because they're lists. The instructor name is a list, the instructor office is a list, and the student list is a list. So the instructor stuff, remember we queried and we had two things that we selected. The instructor from the course enrollment instructor, the full name, and the office from the course enrollment's instructor's office assignments location. So we have two elements in this anonymous class that got retrieved. We loop through it, and instead of simply setting the value, because there's more than one of these, we add this to the list. So we add the instructor name to the list, and we add the instructor office to the list. So these two arrays get set. And again, in many cases, there's only going to be one instructor name and one office. But if there's more than one, this accommodates it. Finally, we do this for the students. Now, what are we selecting from the student? Well, we're filling in a field called student in that anonymous class. Notice it refers to A, all right, is an anonymous type, and it has one attribute, student. And that student equals the student's full name that is associated from the associated enrollment record, where we filter out by course ID. Same thing, we loop through and we populate that array. And if it didn't pull a course name, if for some reason the ID was wrong, or if there was not an ID present, then we're simply returning. Actually, this if statement's kind of useless, because if it's true, we're returning. If it's not true, we're returning. So we could actually get rid of that if statement if we wanted to. All right, now let's look at the Razor page. The department and course is going to be relatively simple because there is only one department and one course name. So what are we pulling from the from the model for the course? We're pulling from the model, we're taking the model, and we're pulling the course name attribute. So we're pulling this field, which got populated from this that got retrieved in the query, gets populated, is used to populate the course name. Likewise with department name. Since there's only one of these, there's no loop for them, because we know by definition a course can only have a single, a given course ID can only have a single course. Likewise, a single course can only have a single department name. So we know that course name and department name, there's only going to be one of them. For instructors and students, however, we know that we could have multiple. Now, those we need to loop through. So we're going to loop through each member, each item in the model instructor name, which is a list. Lists that got populated from the instructor and the course assignments. And same thing with offices, except it got populated from the course assignments, instructor's office assignment. So we loop through each of those. and we display it. And then lastly, we do that for the student and loop through that. And that in a nutshell is how you can do the other syntax of queries. It doesn't matter which you use. In both cases, the critical thing is defining your model correctly and defining the navigation attributes correctly. So please review Canvas to see what the schedule for the rest of the semester will be. All right. If you have any questions, let me know.